have to do, fresh ones at their own cost. So just some of the highlights that we are getting there from Rita Tinina. And you will remember that throughout this process in the preparations for tomorrow's polls, there has been very deliberate efforts to involve the diaspora vote. And we want to bring in my colleague Timothy Otieno, who is based in the United Kingdom and joins us now live just to talk to us about the diaspora vote, how the preparations are going from that end. And a very good evening to you, Tim. I know you're 2 hours behind us. What can you tell us about what the feeling is like ahead of the polls?
Well, good evening to you too, Sharon. It's good to speak to you, good to see you. Now, here in London, which will be one of the polling centers as part of the diaspora votes, it's been all systems go. In fact, the members and officials from the IEBC have been holding consultative meetings with the staff here at the Kenya High Commission just to make sure that the process tomorrow is as seamless and as smooth as possible. About an hour ago, a high-stakes meeting concluded. I was able to sit briefly into that meeting just to try and gauge the level of preparedness by both the High Commission to host this particular event, as well as the IEBC to be able to conduct these particular elections. Now, maybe you can see, or maybe you can't, but there's a list of names behind me attached here at the entrance of the Kenya High Commission. Now, this list contains the names of the registered voters here in the United Kingdom. Remember, the United Kingdom comprises of ideally 4 nations: England, where we are, there's Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. So it's estimated that Kenyans have been spread far and wide in this particular country, forming the United Kingdom, and their names should be here if indeed they were able to register during the first phase of the registration last year and the second phase, which began earlier this year. Now, in London, there have been about 798 official registered voters who are expected to make their way to the High Commission tomorrow from 6 a.m. when the doors open. But the IEBC, according to their website, has been able to register 10,444 diaspora voters, which forms the largest number of diaspora voters in Kenya's electoral history. Now, this is a pool of voters that comes from 12 different countries. If I could maybe be able to remember them, I hope I will, Sharon. If you're a diaspora voter in Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, South Africa, the United Kingdom, where I am, the United States, the United Arab Emirates, Germany, Canada, and Qatar are the 12 countries. I hope I got all of them. Kenyans in those countries and in specific cities within those countries will be able to exercise their democratic right tomorrow, making it one of the most historic electoral processes in the country. Now, in regards to the technicalities, first and foremost, the IEBC has informed us that you will be allowed to vote if you're in the diaspora if you carry the document which you used to register as a voter earlier on this year. So for instance, if someone registered with their Kenyan passport or the East African passport, then that is the document you have to carry with you tomorrow. Do not carry your ID if you did not register with your Kenyan ID. The reverse is also true. If there's a Kenyan living in the diaspora in any of the 12 nations that have listed who registered with their ID, then that is the document they have to carry with them at the polling centers in which they're going to vote. If you carry your passport as opposed to your ID, yet you registered with your ID, the IEB says you will not be allowed to register. In regards to the diaspora vote, it should be an easy process on the face of it because remember, Sharon, only the presidential ballots have been distributed to the 12 countries involved in the diaspora voting. So once somebody makes their way to the High Commission or the embassy, depending on which part of the world the Kenyan is, you check your list, you check your name if it's on the list, after which you're ushered into the High Commission. From that particular point, you will be, the IEBC officials rather will check that you are actually registered on the online registration biometric system, after which you're given a presidential ballot paper. You have to ensure the ballot paper is stamped at the back, otherwise that vote will not be counted and will not be deemed to be valid. After you've been given the ballot paper, you've confirmed it's been stamped, you can head over to the booth and then you can be able to cast your vote and wait for the results. For the UK, there will be 2 polling stations because there are about 798, and by law, if it's more than 400 voters, there has to be another polling station. But earlier on, Sharon, I was able to speak to a few Kenyans who were anxious to be able to exercise their democratic right for the first time. Many of them have lived in the United Kingdom for more than 20 years, and I was able to file that particular story. Have a look.
The official campaign season for the 2022 general election may be over, but for these diaspora voters in London, the delirium that often accompanies said season is far from done. They proudly adorn the attire for their preferred political parties, sitting right next to each other, yet remaining miles apart when it comes to political ideology.
No. Yeah. For the past 10 years, they've done nothing.
Yeah, and when you say they,
it's your government, UDA.
Yeah. You are in partnership with the current government. Is that correct? Yes or no?
No, there's nothing like that.
It's less than 24 hours to the start of the voting exercise, and due to political affiliation, this rather sober discussion threatens to boil over.
I don't believe in your manifesto.
You see, this is the problem with this guy. We tell you what we want to do, then you start arguing, and we have said categorically.
No, you are telling
listen
me,
to what we are saying.
You have been in government.
Now we're losing the plot. Now we're losing the plot. This is not what I don't want to discuss.
Let's pull back a bit. Okay, fair enough.
Let's pull back. I think if we go to this, go and ask them. Let's pull back.
In the government.
Once cooler heads prevail, I decide to talk to some of those involved.
Today, we really appreciate your time.
Ali Mohammed has been in the UK for 20 years and swears by the Azimio la Umoja manifesto.
Mimi nampigia ule mzee umemsikia anaitwa Baba Raila Amolo Odinga na Mama Karua.
Kwa nini?
Kwa sababu moja. Huyo mama kwanza aliwacha serikali ya Kibaki. Kwa ajili aliona mambo sio mzuri, akasema no is no. Ni mtu wa kusema ukweli.
For Dr. Martin Koyabe, the Kenya Kwanza plan speaks to his concerns as a Kenyan living in the diaspora.
The issues facing a Kenyan living abroad do not necessarily differentiate which party the individual is in. Those issues are the same. We face the same taxation. We face the same challenges, but the only issue that we have is whichever government that comes to power should be able to absorb both people from the aisle with good ideas.
Both the Roots and Agano Party manifestos speak little about what each presidential candidate will do for the Kenyans living abroad. That is perhaps why many of those in the United Kingdom have seemingly thrown their weight behind the 2 leading candidates in the upcoming poll, which will, for the first time, include 12 countries participating in the presidential ballot.
It's a big milestone in the Kenyan history of political development. It's something we have pushed for a very long time.
Both the Kenya Kwanza plan and the Azimio la Umoja manifesto have clauses touching on issues affecting Kenyans living in the diaspora. One champions to have a ministry formed, the other a special representative in parliament. As Kenyans back at home gear up to exercise their civic duty, those kilometers away are also gathering in readiness to cast a historic ballot that will affect the leadership of their country for the next half a decade. Timothy Otieno, KTN News in London, the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, Timothy Otieno, giving us a very comprehensive update there on how the diaspora is preparing to vote tomorrow. And of course, he's just indicated how historic this is, even for the diaspora community. This is the first time that we have this many registered voters in diaspora. Speaking of 10,444 Kenyans living in the diaspora who will be casting their vote tomorrow. And at this point, I want us to cross over now to one of the crucial areas in this election.